The crack of ice splitting the winter air sent a jolt through Yates Harding's body as he trudged along the frozen riverbank, his 7-year-old daughter Lily skipping several paces ahead, collecting pine cones for her school project. That terrible sound, he knew it well from growing up in these parts, and it meant only one thing: someone had broken through. "Lily, stay right there," Yates shouted, his voice sharp with urgency as he scanned the river's icy surface, his heart hammering against his ribs. Then he saw them, a woman screaming frantically on the shore and a small figure thrashing in the dark water about 20 yards out, where the ice had given way. Without hesitation, Yates tore off his worn wool coat, kicked off his boots, and sprinted toward the break in the ice. "Daddy, no." Lily cried, but Yates was already moving, his mind focused on a single thought: a child was dying. The cold hit him like 1,000 knives when he plunged into the river. The water seized his lungs, threatened to paralyze his muscles, but Yates fought against it, swimming powerfully toward the struggling child, a girl, maybe 10 years old, her face a mask of terror as she tried desperately to keep her head above water. "I've got you," Yates gasped as he reached her, wrapping one arm around her small torso. "Hold on to me, don't fight." The girl clutched at him with frozen fingers as Yates turned back toward shore, kicking with every ounce of strength he possessed. Each stroke was agony, each breath a battle, but he refused to give in to the cold. Not with this child's life in his hands, not with his own daughter watching. By the time Yates dragged himself and the girl onto the shore, his limbs were numb, his vision blurring. The woman, the girl's mother, he assumed rushed forward, tears streaming down her face as she wrapped the child in her expensive cashmere coat. "Emma. Oh my God, Emma," she cried, holding the shivering girl close. Through the fog of his own hypothermia, Yates was dimly aware of Lily running toward him, her small face contorted with fear. He tried to smile at her, to let her know he was okay, but then the world tilted sideways, and everything went black. When Yates opened his eyes, he was no longer by the river. Instead, he found himself in an unfamiliar room, lying on what felt like the softest bed he'd ever experienced. For a moment, he thought he might be dreaming or worse, dead, but then he heard Lily's voice. "Daddy's awake." She called out, and suddenly she was there, climbing onto the bed beside him, her small hands touching his face. "You slept for so long." "Where are we, Pumpkin?" Yates asked, his voice rough. His memories were fragmented: the crack of ice, the freezing water, a terrified child's face. "We're at Miss Cassidy's house," Lily said. "You saved her daughter, and then you fainted, and she brought us here because she said the hospital was too far away. There's a doctor who came to see you, and Miss Cassidy has a swimming pool inside her house." Before Yates could process this information, a woman appeared in the doorway, tall and striking, with chestnut hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She wore a simple black sweater and jeans, but something in her bearing suggested she wasn't accustomed to simple things. Her eyes, a deep amber color, were fixed on him with an intensity that made Yates suddenly aware of his unshaven face and the borrowed clothes he was now wearing. "Mr. Harding," she said, stepping into the room, "I'm Cassidy Keller. I don't know how to begin thanking you for what you did today." Yates shifted uncomfortably. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Cassidy said firmly. "They wouldn't have. The doctor says you nearly died of hypothermia. You risked your life for my daughter." Her voice caught slightly. "Emma would have drowned if not for you." Before Yates could respond, a young girl appeared beside Cassidy, the same girl he'd pulled from the river, now dressed in dry clothes, her face still pale but her eyes alert and curious. "Thank you for saving me," she said quietly. Yates smiled at her. "You're welcome. I'm glad you're okay." "Can I show Lily my room now, Mom?" Emma asked, looking up at her mother. Cassidy nodded. "Of course, but be careful. Remember what the doctor said about resting." As the girls left the room, chattering excitedly, Yates attempted to sit up, wincing at the stiffness in his muscles. "I appreciate your hospitality, Miss Keller, but Lily and I should probably get going. I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing," Cassidy insisted. "And please call me Cassidy. The doctor said you need at least 24 hours of rest. Besides, there's a snowstorm coming in. The roads will be dangerous." She hesitated, then added, "I've prepared the guest suite for you and Lily. I hope that's acceptable." Yates wanted to protest, but the truth was, he wasn't sure he could make it home in his current condition. And the thought of driving his ancient pickup truck with its bald tires through a snowstorm with Lily in the passenger seat made him reconsider. "Thank you," he said finally. "That's very kind." "It's the least I can do," Cassidy replied. "Are you hungry? I've made soup." As Yates followed Cassidy to the kitchen, moving slowly, his body still recovering from the shock of the icy river, he couldn't help but take in his surroundings. The house was magnificent, a modern masterpiece of glass and stone perched on the hillside overlooking the river. The furniture looked like it belonged in a magazine, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Yates could see the snow beginning to fall, blanketing the landscape in white. It was a world away from the small, drafty cabin he shared with Lily, where he struggled each month to make the rent payments on his meager salary as a maintenance supervisor at the local community college. Since his wife's death 3 years ago, everything had been a struggle: money, parenting, just getting through each day. But Lily was his world, his reason for pushing forward, for working double shifts and fixing their clothes when they tore instead of buying new ones. In the kitchen, the girls were already seated at a large island, sipping hot chocolate and giggling like they'd been friends for years instead of hours. "Your house is amazing," Yates said as Cassidy ladled soup into bowls. "It's too big, honestly," she replied with a small smile. "We moved here from Chicago 6 months ago. I thought a change of scenery might be good for Emma after the divorce." She glanced at her daughter, lowering her voice. "It's been a difficult adjustment." "I understand," Yates said, thinking of Lily's grief after losing her mother. "Kids are resilient, though, more than we give them credit for." Cassidy studied him for a moment. "Lily mentioned that it's just the two of you." Yates nodded. "My wife, Andrea, passed away 3 years ago, cancer." "I'm so sorry," Cassidy said, and Yates could tell she meant it. "That must have been incredibly difficult." "It still is, some days," Yates admitted. "But Lily keeps me going." As they ate, Yates learned that Cassidy was the CEO of a tech company she'd founded 10 years ago, specializing in educational software. She'd moved the company headquarters to the nearby city after her divorce, wanting Emma to grow up somewhere less hectic than Chicago. "What about you?" Cassidy asked. "Lily mentioned you work at the college." Yates felt a flush of embarrassment. "I'm the maintenance supervisor." "It's not glamorous, but the schedule lets me be there for Lily after school most days." To his surprise, Cassidy seemed genuinely interested. "That's impressive, juggling work and single parenting. I have a team of people helping me, and I still feel like I'm failing half the time." After dinner, as the snow continued to fall, they settled in the living room. Yates found himself relaxing despite the opulent surroundings, drawn into conversation with Cassidy while the girls built an elaborate fort using cushions and throws. There was something about Cassidy, a directness, an authenticity beneath her polished exterior that put him at ease. "So," she said, handing him a cup of coffee, "are you originally from around here?" Yates nodded. "Born and raised. My dad worked at the paper mill until it closed down. He taught me everything I know about fixing things, and is he still?" "He passed a few years back, heart attack. My mom's in Florida now, living with my sister." Cassidy looked thoughtful. "You've dealt with a lot of loss." Yates shrugged. "Life happens, you adapt." "Still," she said, "it takes strength to keep going, especially for Lily's sake." As the evening wore on, and the girl's energy finally began to wane, Yates found himself increasingly aware of Cassidy, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the sound of her laugh when Emma told a story about their cat's latest antics, the gentle way she checked on both girls as they began to doze off in their cushion fort. It had been so long since Yates had allowed himself to notice a woman this way, to feel that flicker of interest. He quickly tamped it down. Cassidy Keller lived in a different world. Tomorrow, he and Lily would return to their cabin, and their paths would likely never cross again. But fate, or perhaps the weather, had other ideas. By morning, the snowstorm had intensified, dropping over a foot of snow and making the roads impassable. Cassidy insisted they stay another day, and Yates found he didn't have the energy to argue, especially when Lily looked so delighted at the prospect of spending more time with her new friend. That second day brought a different kind of closeness. With nowhere to go, they settled into a comfortable routine. Yates, feeling stronger, helped Cassidy clear the driveway with her snowblower. Later, they all ventured outside to build snowmen and have an impromptu snowball fight that left them breathless with laughter. By the evening, as they sat by the fireplace playing board games, Yates caught Cassidy watching him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. When their eyes met, she didn't look away. "You're good with them," she said later, as they stood in the kitchen washing dishes after the girls had gone to bed. "Not just with Lily, but with Emma too. She's opened up more these past 2 days than she has in months." Yates handed her a plate to dry. "She's a great kid." "You're doing a good job with her." "I try," Cassidy said, setting down the dish towel, "but sometimes I wonder if my work takes too much time away from her, if I'm making the right choices." "I think all parents wonder that," Yates said, "even the ones who seem to have it all figured out." Cassidy smiled. "Do I seem like I have it all figured out?" From the outside, "Absolutely. This house, your company, the way you handled everything yesterday, you're impressive, Cassidy." She laughed softly. "If only you could see the chaos inside my head." She paused, then added, "For what it's worth, I think you're pretty impressive too. Not many men would dive into a frozen river for a stranger's child." "Like I said, anyone would have—" "No," Cassidy interrupted, stepping closer. "They wouldn't have. You're extraordinary, Yates Harding, whether you see it or not." The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something Yates hadn't felt in years. For a moment, he thought she might lean in, that he might close the distance between them. Instead, she took a small step back, her expression softening. "It's getting late," she said. "We should probably get some rest." Yates nodded, trying to ignore the disappointment that tugged at him. "Good night, Cassidy." The next morning, the roads were finally clear enough for travel. As Yates packed up their few belongings, he found himself dreading the moment they would leave. These past 2 days had been like stepping into another world, one where he wasn't constantly worried about bills, where Lily's laughter filled every room, where he felt a connection with someone for the first time since Andrea died. Cassidy appeared in the doorway of the guest room, watching as he zipped up Lily's backpack. "You don't have to rush off, you know. It's Sunday. The girls are making pancakes." Yates smiled. "Lily's a disaster in the kitchen. I hope you're prepared." "I think we can handle a little mess," Cassidy said, leaning against the doorframe. "Listen, I wanted to ask you something. Emma's birthday is next weekend. We're having a small party here at the house, and she's been asking if Lily can come. You'd be welcome too, of course." Yates hesitated. "That's very kind, but please say yes," Cassidy interrupted. "Emma doesn't have many friends here yet, and she and Lily have really bonded. It would mean a lot to her." The hopeful look in Cassidy's eyes made it impossible to refuse. "We'd love to come. Thank you for including us." The week that followed was filled with anticipation for both Hardings. Lily talked of nothing but Emma's party, while Yates found his thoughts continually drifting to Cassidy, her smile, her laugh, the way she'd looked at him that night in the kitchen. When Saturday arrived, Yates spent more time than usual getting ready, trimming his beard and putting on his one decent shirt, a dark blue button-down that Andrea had always said brought out his eyes. He'd also splurged on a gift for Emma, a science kit that Lily assured him was exactly what Emma wants because she's super smart, Daddy. Driving up to Cassidy's house in his battered pickup, Yates felt a familiar twinge of inadequacy. The driveway was lined with luxury SUVs and sleek sedans, evidence that the other guests moved in Cassidy's affluent circles. He almost turned around, but Lily's excitement kept him going. The party was in full swing when they arrived, with about a dozen children playing organized games in the living room while adults chatted in small groups, wine glasses in hand. Yates immediately felt out of place, acutely aware of his worn jeans and the patched elbows of Lily's sweater. But then Emma spotted them and ran over, throwing her arms around Lily. "You came. Mom said you would, but I was worried because of the snow yesterday." Before Yates could respond, Cassidy appeared, looking stunning in a simple emerald dress that made her amber eyes seem even more striking. "Yates, Lily, I'm so glad you made it." She leaned in to give him a quick hug, and Yates caught the subtle scent of her perfume, something floral and expensive. "Wouldn't miss it," he said, handing her the wrapped gift. "This is for Emma." Thank you, Cassidy said, her hand lingering on his arm. Come on, let me introduce you to everyone. The next hour was a blur of names and faces as Cassidy led him through the crowd. Yates tried his best to engage in conversation, but he felt increasingly out of place among Cassidy's friends' executives, doctors, lawyers, all discussing ski trips to Aspen and private school applications. He found himself retreating to the edge of the room, watching as Lily played happily with the other children, fitting in far more easily than her father. They're insufferable, aren't they? A voice said beside him, and Yates turned to find Cassidy offering him a glass of whiskey. I only know half of them myself. Most are parents from Emma's school. Yates accepted the drink gratefully. They seem nice enough, just different worlds, I guess. Cassidy leaned against the wall beside him, their shoulders almost touching. I grew up in a double-wide trailer in rural Michigan. My dad worked 3 jobs to put me through college. Different worlds isn't always a bad thing, Yates. Before he could respond, they were interrupted by a tall, well-dressed man who placed a proprietary hand on Cassidy's shoulder. There you are, Cass. I've been looking everywhere. Cassidy stiffened slightly. Richard, I didn't expect to see you today. I couldn't miss my daughter's birthday, the man said, his gaze shifting to Yates with thinly veiled curiosity. Richard Keller, he said, extending his hand. Emma's father. Yates shook his hand, noting the firm grip and expensive watch. Yates Harding, nice to meet you. Yates is the man who saved Emma at the river last weekend, Cassidy explained, and Yates didn't miss the way her ex-husband's expression changed surprise, followed quickly by something that looked like resentment. Ah, the local hero, Richard said, his tone just shy of dismissive. Emma mentioned something about that. Thank you, of course. It was nothing, Yates said automatically. I wouldn't say diving into a freezing river is nothing, Cassidy countered, her voice sharp. Emma would have drowned. Richard's jaw tightened. Well, perhaps if you'd been watching her more carefully, don't, Cassidy warned. Not today. An uncomfortable silence fell, broken only when Emma called for her father from across the room. With a final nod to Yates, Richard walked away, leaving Cassidy visibly tense. I'm sorry about that, she said quietly. Richard can be difficult, no need to apologize, Yates assured her. Ex-spouses are complicated. Cassidy gave him a grateful smile, then sighed as she checked her watch. I should get the cake ready. Would you mind helping me in the kitchen? I could use a break from all this. In the relative quiet of the kitchen, Cassidy seemed to relax, her movements more natural as she retrieved the birthday cake from the refrigerator, a spectacular creation shaped like a stack of books, reflecting Emma's love of reading. This is amazing, Yates said, examining the intricate fondant details. Did you make this? Cassidy laughed. God, no, I can barely make toast. It's from a bakery in the city. She began counting out candles. 10, I can hardly believe it. Sometimes I still see her as that tiny baby they placed in my arms. I know what you mean, Yates said, thinking of Lily. They grow up so fast. As Cassidy arranged the candles, she glanced at him. Can I ask you something personal? Yates nodded, curious. After Andrea died, how did you? I mean, how did you know when it was okay to move on, to start thinking about yourself again, not just as Lily's dad? The question caught Yates off guard. I'm not sure I have, he admitted. These past 3 years, it's been all about Lily, making sure she's okay, that she has what she needs. But what about what you need? Cassidy asked softly. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Yates couldn't breathe. I haven't thought about that in a long time, he said finally. Maybe you should, Cassidy suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of several children, eager for cake. With a small smile, Cassidy lit the candles, and soon the kitchen was filled with the sound of happy birthday as Emma prepared to make her wish. Later, after the cake had been eaten and presents opened, the party began to wind down. Yates found himself helping Cassidy clean up while the girls played upstairs, Richard having departed shortly after the cake cutting. Thank you for today, Cassidy said as they worked side by side, gathering discarded wrapping paper. It meant a lot to Emma having Lily here. Lily had a great time, Yates replied. She hasn't stopped talking about Emma all week. Cassidy smiled, then hesitated, as if weighing her next words carefully. I was thinking. Emma's been asking about taking swimming lessons. After what happened at the river, I think it's a good idea. Do you know if the community college pool offers classes? They do, Yates confirmed. I actually help maintain the pool systems there. The instructor, Megan, is excellent with kids. Would you? Cassidy paused. Would you consider coming with us? The first time, at least, Emma might feel more comfortable with someone she knows. Yates knew he should probably say no. Getting more involved with Cassidy and Emma would only complicate things, would only make it harder when they eventually drifted back to their separate worlds. But looking at Cassidy, at the hopeful expression in her eyes, he found he didn't want to say no. I'd be happy to, he said. Just let me know when. That first swimming lesson led to a second, and then a third. Soon, it became a weekly routine, Yates and Lily meeting Cassidy and Emma at the college pool every Saturday morning. Afterward, they would get lunch together, sometimes at a diner in town, other times at a cafe near the river. The girls became inseparable, and with each passing week, Yates found himself growing closer to Cassidy as well. He learned that beneath her CEO exterior, she was funny and down to earth, with a passion for old movies and a terrible singing voice that she displayed unashamedly during car rides. She told him about her childhood in Michigan, about building her company from nothing, about her failed marriage to Richard, who had never understood her drive or her priorities. In turn, Yates opened up about his life with Andrea, about the struggles of raising Lily alone, about his dreams of someday returning to college to finish the engineering degree he'd abandoned when his father got sick. To his surprise, Cassidy didn't seem put off by his modest circumstances or his blue-collar job. Instead, she seemed to genuinely value his perspective, often seeking his advice on matters regarding Emma or her home. As winter gave way to spring, their time together expanded beyond Saturday mornings. There were impromptu dinners, weekend hikes, movie nights with the girls. Cassidy began stopping by the college during Yates's lunch breaks, bringing coffee and conversation. Yates found himself looking forward to these visits, planning his days around them. One evening in early April, after the girls had fallen asleep during a movie marathon at Cassidy's house, Yates found himself alone with her on the patio, a gentle rain falling beyond the covered terrace. I've been meaning to ask you something, Cassidy said, turning to face him. My company's annual gala is next weekend. It's a formal event, very boring, lots of investors and tech people talking about things that don't matter. But I'm required to attend, and I was wondering if you might want to come with me. Yates hesitated. I don't own a tux, Cassidy smiled. A suit would be fine. If you don't want to come, I understand. I know these events can be, I'd love to, Yates interrupted. If you're sure you want me there. I'm sure, Cassidy said, reaching for his hand. More than sure. The week leading up to the gala was a flurry of preparation. Yates spent nearly an entire paycheck on a new suit, unable to bear the thought of appearing shabby next to Cassidy. Lily, thrilled at the prospect of a sleepover with Emma and the babysitter, helped him pick out a tie that matched Cassidy's dress, which she had secretly been shown photos of. On the night of the gala, as Yates stood in Cassidy's foyer waiting for her to come downstairs, he felt a strange mix of nervousness and anticipation. This would be their first official appearance as a couple, if that's what they were. They hadn't discussed labels, hadn't even kissed yet, though there had been moments when it seemed inevitable, when the air between them seemed charged with possibility. When Cassidy descended the stairs in a midnight blue gown that seemed to catch every light in the room, Yates momentarily forgot how to breathe. She was stunning not just because of the dress or the elegant way her hair was swept up, but because of the warmth in her eyes when she saw him, the genuine pleasure in her smile. You look beautiful, he said simply, meaning it more than she could know. So do you, she replied, straightening his tie. Very handsome. The gala was held in a grand ballroom at the city's most prestigious hotel. As they entered, Yates was acutely aware of the curious glances directed their way. Cassidy Keller, tech industry powerhouse with a maintenance supervisor on her arm. But if Cassidy noticed the stares, she gave no indication. Instead, she kept her hand firmly in his as she guided him through the crowd, introducing him to colleagues and investors with obvious pride. "Yates is the reason my daughter is alive," she told one group, recounting the story of the river rescue. "He's the bravest man I know." As the evening progressed, Yates found himself relaxing, drawn into conversations about the college's infrastructure needs and the potential applications of Cassidy's educational software in vocational training. To his surprise, several of the investors seemed genuinely interested in his perspective as someone who worked directly with students. "You're a hit," Cassidy whispered during a lull in the conversation. "Harrison from Venture Partners wants to pick your brain about technical education." "I'm just being myself," Yates replied, surprised by the positive reception. "That's exactly why they like you," Cassidy said. "Most people in this room are pretending to be someone they're not." Later, as the band played a slow song, Cassidy led Yates to the dance floor. He pulled her close, one hand resting on the small of her back, the other holding hers against his chest. "Thank you for coming tonight," Cassidy said, looking up at him. "I know this isn't your scene. Any scene with you in it is my scene," Yates replied, surprising himself with his boldness. Cassidy's eyes softened. "Yates, these past few months, they've meant so much to me. Emma adores you and Lily, and she paused, searching his face. "I've never met anyone like you." Yates's heart hammered in his chest. "I feel the same way, about you, about Emma." "But Cassidy, I have to be honest, I'm worried." "About what?" "About us. About what happens when the novelty wears off. I'm not from your world, I don't have much to offer someone like you." Cassidy stopped dancing, her hands moving to frame his face. "Yates Harding, you have everything to offer. Kindness, integrity, strength. You're an amazing father, a hard worker, a man who jumps into frozen rivers to save little girls. You make me laugh, you listen when I talk, you see me the real me, not the CEO or the ex-wife or the mother, just Cassidy." Yates swallowed hard, overcome with emotion. "I'm falling in love with you," he admitted quietly. "I think I have been since that first day by the river." Cassidy's smile was radiant. "I love you too, and if you're worried about our different backgrounds, don't be. We'll figure it out together." Then finally, she leaned in and kissed him, a gentle, perfect meeting of lips that quickly deepened into something more passionate, more promising. Around them, the ballroom faded away until there was nothing but Cassidy in his arms, her heart beating against his, their futures suddenly, wonderfully intertwined. 6 months later, on a crisp fall day, Yates stood on the riverbank where it all began, watching as Emma and Lily raced each other across the newly constructed footbridge, their laughter carrying on the breeze. Beside him, Cassidy leaned against his shoulder, her hand finding his. "They're getting so big," she said, a note of wonder in her voice. "I can hardly believe it's been almost a year since that day on the ice." Yates squeezed her hand, feeling the small diamond ring he'd placed on her finger just 2 weeks earlier. It wasn't as large or as flashy as the one Richard had given her, but Cassidy had cried when he proposed, saying it was perfect because it came from him. "Best day of my life," Yates said. "Terrifying at the time, but it brought you and Emma into our lives." "Our lives," Cassidy repeated, smiling up at him. "I like the sound of that." They had decided to take things slowly with the wedding plans, giving the girls time to adjust to the idea of becoming sisters. But they had already made other changes. Yates had enrolled in evening classes to finish his engineering degree, with Cassidy's full support, while Cassidy had scaled back her work hours to spend more time with both girls. They were still figuring out where they would live after the wedding. Cassidy's house was beautiful but felt too much like her past life, while Yates's cabin was too small for a family of 4. "Maybe we should build something new," Cassidy had suggested the night before. "A place that's just ours, not mine or yours, but something we create together." Now, watching the girls run back toward them, faces flushed with excitement, Yates felt a profound sense of gratitude. His life had changed in ways he never could have imagined that winter day when he heard the ice crack. What had begun as a moment of terror had transformed into the greatest blessing, a second chance at love, at family, at the future. "Race you to the car." Emma called to Lily and they were off again, 2 girls who had once been strangers but were now as close as any sisters could be. We should catch up to them, Cassidy said, but she made no move to leave, instead turning to face Yates fully. I love you, more than I ever thought possible. Yates pulled her close, kissing her with all the emotion he felt: gratitude, joy, and a love so deep it still took his breath away. I love you too, always will. Hand in hand, they walked along the riverbank, following the path their daughters had taken, moving together toward the future they would build one day, one moment, one love story at a time.